Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Ashley Elenbaas with Sky House Herb School and Apothecary, and I'm here with Rukmini Walker of UrbanDevi. Welcome, Rukmini.
You so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, we're gathered here together to talk about the darkness and the light and the plants and the way that nature teaches us and reminds us of how to be in darkness and how to move through it into the light. So, I'm really excited for today's conversation. Before we begin, let's start with some opening prayers just to set the mood and the tone for this sacred discussion. Rukmini, would you start us off, please?
Thank you so much. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respects to all my teachers who have opened my eyes while I was standing in the darkness of ignorance and blessed me with the salve of love and bringing me into the light. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rukmini. So, as we mentioned earlier, this discussion of the light holders through winter, this is one of our talks in this series that we've been doing over the last several months called Devotional Mysticism and Plant Teachers. So, if you'd like to listen to previous episodes, you can find those on the Devotional Mysticism and Plant Teachers playlist on my website, also on Rukmini's YouTube channel. You can find our talks there. So, I want to talk about darkness first because we're all so eager to get to the light, to talk about the good and the how-tos and the rational, nuts and bolts of how to survive, but we don't like to spend time in the hard parts, in the tough bits. So let's start there. Let's start with darkness and what is its value?
I believe that all life is born out of the darkness of the earth. When we think about seeds in the darkness of the soil, fructifying, and human life beginning in the darkness of a mother's womb, the animals and the humans and the seeds, and how Mother Earth is holding us in kind of in the darkness of her womb. And then we come into the light of day, and we have to look forward, but we have to look back and look all around. So I think this is wisdom to look around, to look behind, to look around us, and to honor our source, honor the darkness. And I also think of Carl Jung and his talk about shadow work and doing, looking at the shadow self and what are the parts of myself that I'm so unwilling to see, and before I go forward.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are not only the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, but what are the mental patterns, constructs, and beliefs that we have that we might have never questioned before. And I know for me this winter, this has been a big thing is looking at my assumptions about myself and about the world and really asking, like, is it true? Like if I've never questioned these assumptions, what might I not be seeing? And it's like, you don't know what you don't know.
So true. And when you think of the collective unconscious that's come down through us, through our families, and what we just accept as realities. You just reminded me, we recently attended the funeral of a very, very dear friend who was a mentor for us in interreligious dialogue, a British man. And at his funeral, his grandchildren were there, his children and grandchildren were there. And his kids said that he taught them, he was a great scholar, and he taught them, when you read a book or when you watch television, you have to do that with a critical mind and always be asking, why is this man lying to me?
Wow. Yeah. Like,
So
what is the agenda,
what
right?
is the agenda? What is the agenda? And what is it from, from my parents or from my past, from my culture that I want to bring forward into the new year, into the spring? So I was also thinking a lot about this, and what is it that I want to leave behind me in
Yes.
in the old year, in 2022? What is it that I want to leave behind me? So I really like the idea of yeah, dreaming into the new year. And Ashley, you said to me something once about how bears go into a cave to dream, and I always remember that. And so just this idea of dreaming into a new reality, which is even beyond setting intentions,
Mm,
because intentions are something that I already have. I have my list, and they may be in the mind, but being open to the possibility of dreaming, almost dreaming into the darkness of
yeah.
that cave of the heart, dreaming into the darkness. How can I be a holder of light, as I move from the darkest, longest night of the year of the solstice? How can I move forward into the days of spring, and all kinds of crocuses popping up through the snow? How can I move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to this, the dreaming, because I think this is such an important piece that, again, we give so much value in our culture to what's next, like what is the action plan? Let's make a vision board. And not that they're not helpful, but the unknown, right? The great dark unknown, the place of dreams. How do we get still? Like how do we actually do that? I mean, what do spiritual traditions tell us about how to access the darkness and that still dreaming space?
Yeah, I think we have neglected to stop and pause and breathe. Here's something I found that I thought was beautiful from someone named Gary Sukov. He says, "The winter solstice has always been a special time to me as a barren darkness that gives birth to a verdant future beyond imagination, a time of pain and withdrawal that produces something joyfully inconceivable, like a monarch butterfly masterfully extracting itself from the confines of a cocoon, bursting forth into unexpected glory."
Mm,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, just like going into the unknown, really, into the dark unknown, and being open to dream and to receive. Really, it's not about what's in my mind already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I think about my children too. It's like, I'm trying to train my children to be in their bodies and to feel their emotions and things, emotions like grief and sadness and disappointment. Like actually staying in your body to experience those feelings and not just rushing past them. And it's uncomfortable. And a lot of parents don't have the patience for it because it's it's hard. But I think that that's such a gift we can give to our children and to ourselves is no, stay in that feeling like, oh, it's so hard. Like it's so hard to be still. I don't want to be still. You don't want to be still. And I don't want to be sad, but I am sad. And kind of parenting ourselves in some ways to just sort of stay in those tough places and journal and rest, maybe stay in bed all day if you have the luxury of doing that, to just stay in those uncomfortable spaces, maybe.
Well, this is the time, I was reading something about someone who, they in her family, they go to sleep early, and they kind of like thinking of how bears do hibernate, going to sleep early, and maybe lighting candles early in the morning or at night. And I think it's what you're saying about sadness is so important, because when I feel sad about the loss of someone or something, it's because that person mattered. That
Mm.
person mattered, so therefore I feel sadness. And so, is it Hafez? I think it's Hafez or Rumi, one of the two, who said, "Don't give up your loneliness too quickly." So to not don't give up the darkness, don't give up the sadness, dwell in it, and explore, what does it feel to. And then we can also feel compassion for other people's suffering when we've been able to allow ourselves to dwell in that kind of sadness, or longing,
Yeah.
or loneliness, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I was thinking about some plants too, for the dream space. One of I love burning herbs in the winter and creating these aromatic smokes in the spaces. So I really like to burn Angelica root, and it can be Angelica archangelica is the native one to the North America, and Angelica sinensis or Dong Quai is native to Asia and China. But both of those can be burned. They're these hard roots. I actually have some in a little dish around on my desk, but it's bear medicine. The root looks sort of like a dark hairy bear, and bears will dig up the roots when they come out of hibernation to eat them. They're very aromatic, but when you burn them, it's supposed to help. Matthew Wood, who's one of my herb teachers, says that it invokes the dreaming mind. So if you're going to do meditation or before you go to sleep, burn this root, and it smells kind of like maple syrup, mixed with it's like a sweet earthy smell. So that's one herb that I think of, and then another one is mugwort that's been used traditionally for dreaming, by native peoples, different species around the earth, around the globe. And so mugwort can be made into pillows. You can drink it as a tea, and it really helps increase lucid dreaming. So it's not to be taken during pregnancy internally, or breastfeeding. So just that little plug as my for my herbal background. But those are both really interesting plants to facilitate that dream work that I think this is such a potent time to do.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, how really, it's even from the Vedic perspective. You're reminding me that, in Vedic cosmology, there is Lord Vishnu dreaming the world. He's lying on the causal ocean, the ocean of cause of everything, right? And he's lying there and dreaming. Yeah, he's dreaming the material realm, that we exist in this place where we have a chance to play out our desires, our dreams, and sometimes even dreams of kind of a domination, that maybe I don't need God at all. Maybe I could kind of do it on my own. Maybe I could be the center of all existence. So this kind of, you know, dreams that may be enriching, but then dreams, egoistic dreams that maybe are meant to move beyond.
Mm.
So yeah, so it's very, very interesting. What is real and what is a dream? It's an interesting question, isn't
Yeah, it's that quote, am I a butterfly dreaming I'm a
it?
human, or human dreaming I'm a butterfly, or I think something like that.
Right, right,
Yeah, which is real. So I think that brings us to this idea of the solstice, which is the still point. Solstice is soul means sun, stis means stillness. So we are kind of moving from the darkest point of the year into the still point, and then from there the light will begin to grow. So what is the significance, you think, of the solstice, of this moment that we are really coming up to?
It's so interesting, because I think our ancestors saw it as a pause in time, a pause for reflection, but a pause when, it's a pause between the time when light is starting to increase, when the darkest time at midnight, and even to the point where It's really interesting. I was reading that December 25th was, in previous times, was the solstice. And that was taken as and even ancient people, even pagan people, would talk about a divine child being born at this time. And the idea that even in Persia, there was someone who was considered, he was called Mithra, and he was the incarnation of eternal light. And he was said to be born on this December 25th. So these, the sacred coming out of the darkness, the carrier of light, and then you have Hanukkah. I mean, my sister just told me that they had 50 people over last night. They had a Hanukkah potluck, and they had 50 people there. So this is another celebration of light over darkness. As you know, in earlier in the autumn, there's the Diwali season, which is also considered a celebration of light over darkness. And yeah, so it's very, very interesting. Feasts and celebrations, and honoring. I think it's a pause. Also about the moon. The moon becoming a smallest little sliver of light, and then from the new moon, which is really no moon, or the darkness of the new moon. Yeah, and how both sides, they begin and end in darkness. And how darkness is the birthplace of light and of life. And it's kind of like a tomb, like a gentle tomb that receives everything that dies. Like, we're seeing all the plant life die back into the earth, and human bodies are put back into the earth, and how it just regenerates, and it becomes this beautiful cycle of
Yes.
life. Can I share this beautiful poem I have from David White about the moon?
Yes,
Which,
please.
because I love this poem because it's about faith, um, and not having any faith, and it's about light and darkness. Let me read this. I love this poem. He says, I want to write about faith, about the way the moon rises over cold snow night after night, faithful even as it fades from fullness, slowly becoming the last curving and impossible sliver of light before the final darkness. But I have no faith myself. I refuse it the smallest entry. Let then this poem, my small poem, like a new moon, slender and barely open, be the first prayer that opens me to faith.
Mm, that's so beautiful. And I just love his humbleness too. And, you know, and I think that's such, for me, the people who have the greatest faith claim such little faith.
So true.
Because
So,
it seems like it's in that, as you say, sacred smallness, that real, spiritual gains can happen. Can you speak to that a little bit?
yeah, it's really beautiful because it's like this still point of death, where life and death are born, and that's sacred. I call it the satisfaction of sacred smallness, because that's when we can really be open to receiving what I don't yet have, what I don't understand, what I don't know. And as long as I'm so entitled and thinking that I have so much and I'm so important and my opinions are so important, isn't that so much part of our contemporary culture right now? What I think and my opinion and my this and my that, but it it sort of disempowers me from being able to hear. So the place of goodness, which is discussed in Bhagavad Gita, there's a name of, it's called vada, which is when someone can deeply hear and be open to being changed by what they hear or receive. This is the place of the place of goodness, which is, it's almost like the airport that we need to go to before we can fly into transcendence.
Mm,
Like if I can go to that place of patience and quiet and honoring others and humility and simplicity, if I can go to that place, then I can start to fly actually.
mm,
If I don't come down, I love that. Tis a gift to be simple, right? Tis a gift to be free. I love that, the idea of coming down to that simple place and being able to receive. So the path of bhakti yoga is about having a receiver's mind, not having an achiever's mind. I can do it. I can do this impossible, you know, yoga pose or whatever it is. But it's about receiving and being gifted, really,
mm.
um, with more than what I have. And so I love this idea of dreaming into something unknown and dreaming into the gifts that may come from the darkness. And in those, moments of, okay, so December 21st, right? The light is increasing moment by moment. So going from that place of honoring the unknown to the place of just inklings of a new dream, a new reality, a new me, a new
Yeah.
world, new world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Hi.
that image of, that smallness, thinking about, if our cup is full, like if our mind and if our cup is full. My husband recently read a book called The Wisdom Jesus. I forget the author of it, but he really loved it. And one of the things, it was written by this Episcopalian uh minister, and she talks about how, we need to constantly empty our cups. Most of us are walking around with our cups completely full. And so, how can we receive grace and mercy and all of these gifts and these new insights and growth if we're constantly, if our cups are constantly full? So, this idea of trying to constantly empty, if we empty ourselves through meditation and through stillness and contemplation and questioning things like your friend, um, who recently passed at his funeral, he taught his kids, like, asking those questions, emptying ourselves to receive new information. I think what a gift to enter the new year in, if you can empty your cup and then have that space to receive something new. What a gift that would be to yourself.
Yes, and allowing my cup to be filled with gratitude, with something beyond me. So, in other words, emptying my cup, that it's not about me and it's not about mine. It's emptying myself, emptying my cup in order to receive the gifts that are beyond me, the gifts that are all around me from Mother Nature, from divinity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the gifts that I have been receiving so much this winter has been the gift of pine and the gift of the evergreen tree. Because, in the here in Minnesota, and I think, most places that have seasons, all the leaves fall and it's so brown, and for here, us in Minnesota, very white, but it's very barren. And yet we have these trees that are green and bright and vibrant in these kind of dark landscapes. And I just find so much hope. And I think it's the tradition across the world, to bring greenery into homes and to bring lights into the home, to remind us of the everlasting nature of the spirit, the evergreen nature of the spirit that is undying. um, and I wanted to share, if it's okay, just some ideas, some interesting facts about pine as a medicine, because I think that this is really helpful. It's like, oh yeah, pine, it's great, it's green, but did you know that pine contains this compound called alpha pinene? It's a volatile oil, and this is what gives the pine that smell, that distinctive smell. And alpha pinene does two things, which is really interesting. Medicinally, for us humans, it's a bronchodilator, so it actually expands our lungs. So have you ever noticed when you walk into a pine forest, how like you want to breathe that in. It's like it forces your lungs to want to take deep breaths. So that's a gift in itself. Another thing that it does is that it's a natural anxiolytic and antidepressant, which means it helps with anxiety and depression. So it actually can lift our mood and elevate our minds and spirits. And so this is a medicine I often use with clients who have grief, because when we have grief, we stop breathing. We like hold our lungs, we clutch our chest.
Mm.
And then, it can be very hard to find joy and to feel relaxed. And so pine has it's so medicinal this time of year. And also it creates these alpha pinene also sends signals to the clouds. They actually NASA and I forget which part of the U.S. government uses this, but pine trees create a chemical that sends signals up into the clouds to produce rain.
Wow,
So
really?
they actually modulate how much alpha pinene they release depending on whether they need rain or not. And so up like in the great uh northwest, like where the Olympic Peninsula, Washington State, they have so much rain because they have so many pines, and those pines ask for rain and they're given rain. They modulate. And so they're it's just brilliant. These plants are so intelligent. And isn't water so cleansing? Isn't it so purifying? Isn't it so relaxing? So this plant has such a relationship with our ability to replenish ourselves, to help us slow down, take deep breaths. And so, we have a pine tree in our house as we celebrate Christmas. And here's a little branch from ours here I keep at my desk just to remind me. But it's, there's something about this plant that it makes sense why we bring it into our homes, right?
So let me ask you, Ashley, is it good to put pine in a diffuser also? For those of
Yes.
Okay, so put pine in a diffuser at this time of year. And yeah, you just think of how these evergreen trees are holders of the light, and how all over the world, like well, what in Sweden they make these little um garlands and put on the little girls, and they carry candles, and even before Christianity, pagan people would be using mistletoe and pine and holly and all of these evergreen trees. We have a holly tree right outside our window, and it's food for the whole neighborhood of birds and squirrels. And it's amazing because they come and eat these red berries all through the winter. And yeah, these are the holders of grace, really, for the in the darkest days of the winter. It's such a beautiful thing. And then the way they reach up to the sky, it's just so beautiful. And when you think of all the celebration of green trees and green wreaths, and so beautiful in this season. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we bring that evergreen remembrance into our lives, even when things are really dark? And I think you were going to talk a bit about like sort of crisis, but in these moments of crisis, what are the tools that we have? What are the reminders of the light that we can bring in? And certainly pine, and even pine essential oil that you can diffuse. There's so many different ways to access this medicine.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So, thinking of almost like the solstice as being kind of like winter, almost being like a type of a Sabbath,
Mm.
where we kind of pause the day when God rests, right? God created the world and then rested, right? So just pausing out of kind of a deference, and just honoring a cycle that's much greater than ourselves. Um, yeah. Is this maybe a time when I could share that poem from Mary Oliver?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, this is really nice. And then maybe we can talk a bit about crisis also. But Mary Oliver she's just so real, isn't she? She
Yes.
just honors the yeah. So here's what she says. She says, last night, this is called the snowy, what's it called? Called Snowy Night by Mary Oliver. She says, last night, an owl in the dark blue tossed an indeterminate number of carefully shaped sounds into the world, in which, a quarter mile away, I happened to be standing. I couldn't tell which one it was, the barn or the great horned ship of the air. It was that distant. But anyway, aren't there moments that are better than knowing something and sweeter? Snow was falling, so much like stars filling the dark trees, that one could easily imagine its reason for being was nothing more than prettiness. I suppose if this were someone else's story, they would have insisted on knowing whatever is knowable, would have hurried over the fields to name it, the owl, I mean. But it's mine, this poem of the night. And I just stood there, listening and holding out my hands to the soft glitter falling through the air. I love this world, but not for its answers. And I wish good luck to the owl, whatever its name. And I wish great welcome to the snow, whatever its severe and comfortless and beautiful meaning. Wow. So
Goosebumps.
I love that so much. So, I wanted to share something on that point about, and this is from the commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam from a great teacher from the 17th century, Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he says, I always find this so profound. He says, it is at night that the sunrise becomes attractive. During the hot summer, that cold water gives comfort. And during the cold winter months, that warm water is pleasing. Lamplight appears attractive in darkness, not in the glaring light of day. And when one is distressed by hunger, food tastes especially good. So then he says, to strengthen the mood of dependence on him and longing for him, the Lord arranges for his devotees to go through some suffering. And when he appears, in order to deliver them, their gratitude and transcendental pleasure are boundless. So, yeah, this idea of human life, animal life, being born in the darkness of the womb, and how crisis also is what shines in darkness. Brene Brown, she says, the dark does not destroy the light, it defines it. It's our fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. Yeah, just honoring the grief, honoring the sadness, honoring the darkness. Here's another one I love from Rumi. He says, everyone sees the unseen in proportion to the clarity of his heart, and that depends upon how much he has polished it. Whoever has polished it sees more. More unseen forms become manifest to him. So, that reminds me of this Vedic aphorism. It's from the Brihanaranyaka Upanishad that says, Asato mam sadgamaya, tamo ma jyotir gamaya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya, om shanti, shanti, shanti. So lead me from the unreal, from the temporary into the eternal. Lead me from darkness into light. Lead me from death to eternal life. And then just this, invocation of peace, peace, peace. So, faith, it's such an interesting conversation about faith. Thinking back to that poem I read earlier about the beautiful, humble David White speaking about that sliver of a moon and having no faith in the darkness. But yeah, faith is the place of mystery. And we find courage to believe what we can't see in that mystery. And, we love the light and it shows us our way on the path, but we have to also endure the darkness because it shows us the stars.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Rukmini. This has been such a deep, enriching. I feel like we've cycled through, we've gone into the deep caves of our minds and hearts and drawn out gems, we've polished and and yeah, explored these different concepts, which I hope our listeners find to be um both inspiring and also yeah, maybe also encouraging them in ways to go into these to go into the night, right, like Mary Oliver, to we go can we go into the night with questions,
Yes, beautiful.
without seeking answers, but just to be alive and present in this unknowable
To be
darkness.
open to mystery. And I have something really beautiful from he was a British man. He was a journalist, actually, Paul Brunton, and he was a mystic. And he says something very beautiful. He says, "Accept the long night patiently, quietly, humbly, and resignedly, as intended for your true good. It is not a punishment for sin committed, but an instrument for annihilating egotism."
Mm.
So I love that. And if I can just share one more, I think this is really sweet. This is from the Orthodox tradition. It's from Saint Nicholas Velimirovich. And he says, "Be humble, for the worst thing in the world is of the same stuff as you." Then he says, "Be confident, for the stars are made of the same stuff as you."
Mm.
I
Yeah.
love what you said about those trees just sending messages to the clouds.
Mm.
And so maybe we send our messages up also and be ready and willing to receive what what divinity sends down.
Yeah. What if our instead of setting intentions for the new year, we just sort of lay ourselves open like, a fertile field, right? And we just say, plant me, plant me.
Yeah,
What a different way to start the new year. So much less pressure and egotism, right? If we
right.
enter in that spirit.
So beautiful. I've been saying to my husband, let's try to go to sleep really early and just honor the darkness and yeah, just plant me and
Mm,
plant some mystery and plant some magic. Yeah.
yes. Oh, thank you so much, Rukmini. And thank you to all of our listeners. And please write your comments. Let us know what stood out to you, what questions you might have, if your own favorite poems or quotes for this time of year. We both really enjoy hearing back from you as well. So thank you, Rukmini, for joining and for this lovely conversation.
I love our conversation, a sacred conversation. Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas and Happy Solstice to everyone.
Yes, yes. May the light return.
Thank you. We
Thank you,
have
everyone. Before we end, there are two important announcements. One is that Rukmini and I will be leading an UrbanDevi retreat in Costa Rica in April of 2023. I've included a link in the description of this talk on YouTube. If you want to learn more, please join us for yoga, plant medicine walks, plant medicine journaling, and a lot of exercises to help you find your own authentic voice. Also, our Kickstarter campaign is still going strong. You have a few weeks left to pledge your donation to support our work. And as part of that, you can gain a seat in the Roots and Spheres course that I'll be teaching alongside my husband, Adam Elenbaas, where we'll be looking at the planetary transits and matching them to plant teachers. So that'll be a phenomenal year-long group experience. Please support us and grab a seat at nightlightastrology.com and then click on the Kickstarter campaign to learn more. Thank you all so much for your support, and I wish you all a happy new year.